Hello, everybody. This is Shay Stanley on Little Steps Live. It has been a wild 24 hours. So actually this Facebook Live is quite timely in terms of what a lot of people have been experiencing over the last 24 hours, but beyond that as well. Since the pandemic began with its first cases of COVID-19 way back in November 19, our lives have changed significantly here in Hong Kong. Work from home policies encouraged homeschooling, you name it. We've had, the quarantines. It's been a lot. So it's taken a lot, a big toll on mental health amongst families here in Hong Kong, kids, you name it. Everybody's been affected. So today we wanted to bring in a specialist. We invited Dr. Zaidi. Hello, Dr. Zaidi.
Hi.
Owner of MindnLife Psychology Practice in Hong Kong, to join us today and share some tips on coping with COVID fatigue. But before we start, I do want to just send out a couple of reminders, a little bit of housekeeping. In terms of Little Steps Live, we do try to go live at least twice a month. Lately, it's been a little bit more with everything going on. We do keep you in the know and on the go with lots of different interviews, resources for parents, experts, and right now, timely topics. So you'll find the topic today, as well as the ones that are coming up over the next couple of weeks, really coming out of parents looking for this type of information. And then be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletters, which will include the link in the description to stay up to date on the content that we've got going on, not just in Hong Kong, but in Singapore and KL as well. So let's get started with today's topic. It's all around mental health and supporting family and friends to navigate our way through this crazy pandemic. It's crucial and it's very difficult. I'd like to introduce you to our guest who will be providing much needed information and advice on how to cope with COVID fatigue. Dr. Zaidi has more than a decade of clinical experience with a wide variety of mental health, social, emotional, behavioral, and relationship challenges. Originally from the UK, she has been living between Hong Kong and Singapore for the past 20 years. In her practice, Dr. Zaidi uses evidence-based treatment solutions to help her clients overcome personal barriers to growth. She specializes in mental health management, depression, postnatal depression, anxiety, stress management, couples therapy, and adjustments for expat families. Thanks for joining us today. I know it's been a wild 24 hours, a very stressful 24 hours, and I know your clinic must be very busy right now. So do appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. We're going to be splitting this topic into three areas. The first will be on prolonged, I guess we've changed this topic. So it's going to be surrounding the prolonged uncertainty of threat. Did I say that right, Dr. Zaidi?
No, I think, yeah, you did actually.
Okay.
It is exposure to threat.
We had it originally at uncertainty. So it's a prolonged exposure to threat, which we will get into today, which Dr. Zaidi has referenced as the more appropriate way to state that. It's been uncertain for quite some time now. The second area that we're going to be focused on is the impact of the restrictions on relationships, on child development, and on education as well. The third area will be incorporating self-care, which we all need to be doing a little bit more of, but we're going to hear some tips and tools around that. And then, of course, we're going to be taking questions throughout the whole interview as well. This is a live chat, so feel free to put your comments, share any discussion points that you want Dr. Zaidi to reference, and we will get to you in between the questions. So let's get started. The first area that we're going to focus on is the prolonged exposure to threat. Maybe before we get started, could you maybe explain what that means exactly?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. And yes, last 24 hours for most of us who have children in Hong Kong would be pretty tough, just having, just what's going on outside. So thank you for turning up for today. The most, prolonged uncertainty is what I have been talking about up until yesterday, really. But it isn't just prolonged uncertainty now. The rest of the world is getting to some form of normality, certainty, whatever the new normal looks like. However, for us here, it has been difficult, and it is. I was trying to think what is it, and it is a prolonged exposure to threat, and the threat is not getting the COVID itself, which is a deadly disease, by the way. It's not light thing to get understood, but it is more the afraid we are. It is the sense of threat around the deprivation of liberty and being able to not be able to manage what's going to happen to us and how we're going to be separated and where we're going to end up. So that is the prolonged threat. That's what I felt, that's what it has been, certainly for people in Hong Kong. I know we've got people joining from Singapore and KL as well, if they are, but that's what's happened here in the last 24 hours. So that's the difference between the two.
And obviously it has mass impacts on your psyche. What would you say are the main stress areas that affect the psyche? What are you seeing in the clinic?
Look, let me just start by saying the three different types of stress and what purpose it serves us.
Okay.
Generally, right? So good stress is that it keeps us alive. That's the one that tells us that there is a challenge in front of us. There's a bus that's coming and you run to save your life. That's the good kind of stress, short-lived, and we can do something about it. Short-term stress is get ready, go kind of stress, which is your deadlines. And again, it keeps us alert and it is keeps us alive as well. So it is a situation, again, that we can deal with. The deadlines coming up, that kind of stress. Now, the toxic stress is when we don't have control over it in a threatening situation. And our bodies have been exposed to this constant threat situation for almost 3 years now. So I think that's the difference between the kinds of stress. Now, we are, as human beings, our survival brain is constantly updating our world, making judgments about what's safe, what isn't, and we are hardwired to overestimate threats and underestimate our ability to be able to handle them in the name of survival. So when certainty is questioned, or when there is a constant sense of threat, stress response is in overdrive, and it instantly goes into the fight, flight, freeze reaction. So you can take action to get to safety. Now, waiting for certainty can feel like torture by a million tiny cuts. And studies show that you're calmer anticipating pain than anticipating uncertainty, or there's an anticipation of threat, because pain is certain. So it's important, the importance of certainty in our lives, in our minds, and in our emotional responses is important. So I think the most common signs and symptoms that we see due to this extended frequent overarousal or extended hyperarousal, it has an impact on our emotional distress, which is anger, irritability, anxiety, depression, short-temperedness, cognitive distress, whereas compromised attention, concentration, compromised processing speed, compromised new learning, memory consolidation, and the mental fatigue. Obviously, it has an impact on the interpersonal relationships. If we are not fully functioning at our best, it does have an impact on that. Your muscles get impacted, your digestive system, your immune system gets compromised. So it has a full impact on every aspect of your life. Now, you asked me, what is it that we have seen in the clinic? We used to see mild to moderate anxiety, and we're seeing extreme and severe cases of OCD, anxiety. It has got shifted from mild to moderate range to severe range. As I said, as an example, that's what's going on. And anxiety, stress, relationship distress are the most that we are seeing.
And you work with adults and children. Are you seeing that just across the board?
Yeah. Yes. throughout through most demographic, most age range. Yes. I mean, yesterday, and it's funny seeing not funny. I mean, it's like seeing 6-year-olds on Zoom who are so able to articulate what exactly is going on for them, what makes them scared, the anxiety. I mean, we've trained our children well for Zoom, basically, in the last 2.5 years. That's what we've done.
There's a few perks coming out of all this. Just a few. Yeah. So obviously you work with children and adults. You've got a lot of coping strategies that I'm sure it's very personal in terms of the individual anxieties. But can you share a few coping strategies for our listeners today? Because I don't know anybody that hasn't felt some level of anxiety or anger or in the last 24 hours. So any coping strategies that you might be able to share around this?
Well, I don't know, spouses, and I'm just joking. I'm joking. No, look, I think, again, the most important part is knowing your ability, not dismissing your ability to be able to cope with what's coming, because we will. As humanity, we are resilient beings, and we will be able to see this through, and we will come up with our solutions. And given that, we have the privilege of having second passports, most of us, we don't have to stay, we can do something about it. So that's the first one with what's been going on over the 24 hours. Now, it's okay to feel angry, anxious, stressed, distressed, upset, all of that. But you've got to also be able to have a support network, a support mechanism for your physical arousal so that you're able to cope with that, as well as your emotional support system, which involves having people around you. And if everybody is going through the same, it is sometimes it does give the feeling of community, but it can also create a sense of, everybody's saying the same thing, and it can continue to make things worse. So choose the people that you speak to, take in the information that is absolutely essential, because there's information overload out there, and that's not helpful. And then the physical part of it is exercise, deep breathing, walking, giving time for your physical arousal to come down. So I think that those are the things that would be helpful to have. So having enough people that you're talking to that leave you with positive energy, which is a bit challenging.
Yes, I think that is something that we've all witnessed. I mean, as soon as there's a bite of news out there on Hong Kong, the WhatsApps blow up, the news blows up. It's very easy to get into the habit of just getting it all consuming. And I think finding those positive outlets or cutting yourself off from certain conversations or certain news feeds, or limiting it to some extent, that's part of the challenge, I think, for people, because it does go into overdrive, doesn't it?
Agreed. And that's where I think having boundaries that fit you is important. And that really is important, I think, over the next however many hours, whatever it's going to be. You need to give the mind the space to be able to make rational decisions, and to be able to do that, you need to get it to a space where your prefrontal cortex is engaged, which is your decision-making center. But if you're in the hyper-arousal mode, that's not going to work. So,
yeah. No, it's good. It's a good tip. And I think because a lot of our, most of our readers are parents, we've got these little people that are just watching us, right? And they're looking for how we're coping and how we're dealing. Do you have any, I know you mentioned just taking time and that self-care we'll get into a little bit more, but any tips, because it is, the house is full, you've got lots of bodies, you're homeschooling, you've got all this news going on, and then you've got these little people that are just looking to see how you respond. Do you have any tips for parents to just keep, keep it together in terms of for the children, not just for themselves?
No, absolutely. Look, they learn by learning from modeling. We need to model the behaviors. It is hard though.
Mm-hmm.
It really has been tough.
Yeah.
Because as parents, we've been teachers. We've also been working in the same space, as you said. We're sharing the space. We're parents. We're teachers. We're also being the professionals that we are supposed to be. So wearing the same hats in the same space is difficult. Having the boundaries in the space is also important, so that you're able to, if you're all working on the dining table, you're creating a space where it becomes a dining table by 7 o'clock in the evening, and
Mm-hmm.
sticking to that structure and routine is very important. It's the other part of, what you bring up about children is that it's okay for them to see us distressed. That's not the issue. It's about how we deal with that distress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the important part, because
That's a really good thing to remember.
yeah, because we all go through difficulties, challenges throughout our lives. So it's not about protecting them from emotional distress. It's about, obviously, we don't want to expose them to emotional harm either, but within the context of that, it's okay for them to see the parents distressed, but then how do parents problem solve? What happens after that? That's the important part for them to learn.
And I am also wondering, I do find that if the news is on all the time, or if got people in the house and everybody's chatting about it, sometimes just having a lot of exposure to it, that's what I find affects certainly my daughter. So limiting a little bit of the exposure has helped in terms of that.
Yeah, totally, exactly. So it is not just putting boundaries on space, time, it's also the information you consume and how much time you give this topic, because there's only so much we can change about it, and the rest of it is, going to take its course.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So that's covering our first topic. We're going to move into the second area. But before we do we have any questions about prolonged uncertainty, prolonged exposure to threats before we move along? I'm just going to check the feed here. Let's see. I don't see any questions coming yet, so just keep it coming. I am keeping an eye on the questions, so if you have any, we will certainly address them live or in between the sections as well. So we're going to move into our second section. Just a reminder for those that have joined us, we are talking about COVID fatigue, which I'm pretty sure everybody has right now. So it is a very important topic right now, certainly for Hong Kongers and families here. We're going to move into our second topic, which is all around the impact of the restrictions on relationships, on child development, and education. A really important topic that we're going to be covering on a broad side. So if you do have specific questions, please do let us know. So the first question I have is, how have the restrictions affected our relationships, and how do they continue to do so? And I guess you're looking at relationships on a couple different levels there.
Yeah, you see, it's the relationships have been put under stress with the people being in the same space. So that part has been very, very difficult, which is basically your spouse, the person that your partners. That has been a challenge, and not being able to have the space to be able to separate that has been difficult. The other part of the relationship is the parenting relationship, and as a parent, I'm sure most of you will agree with me on this one, is that we are all feeling, as it was said earlier, COVID fatigue. We're all drained, and it is almost to a point of burnout, right? So it is important that we don't beat ourselves up if we are not functioning to the level and standards that we're usually used to. We're also being asked to, as I said earlier, to be able to provide several roles of support throughout. It is not just your children that are looking at you for support. It's also your partners, your helpers, anybody else outside as well. So it's many hats that women are wearing at the moment. in our roles, right? So that's the impact that it is having on the relationships. And friendships, I think, have also been impacted because people have varying different opinions on on the vaccines, on how things are being handled here. So that it's been stressful generally.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I agree. I think every relationship has been challenged. I think one of the things that you pointed out that all of us just need to keep going back to is that, just having that self-compassion, because this is extreme times, extreme conditions, extreme amount of people in the house. Everything that was balanced before is no longer. So just having that compassion and saying it's okay. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to be overwhelmed at times. And then it's our job to obviously look for ways of dealing with it more long term as well. My second question is about child development. I think this has come up a lot amongst the families, certainly in our readership. Are there any ways that we can help our child feel more comfortable while restrictions are in place in relation to child development?
The child development, there are the studies, we didn't have enough, but because US and UK are 2 years ahead of us in having, and they've been monitoring what's been going on. So the impact of isolation on children, right? So the first year, as you know, I mean, it is so important, and the learning in the first few years is so crucial the rest of your education. And I'm not talking about reading and writing, because everybody learns to be able to do that by a certain age, which is around 7.5, 8. Everybody kind of equalizes on that. But what I am talking about is that the brains are on fire in those early years. And a year of development at that stage is like 10 years of an adult life. So in-person interactions is what little children crave, primary school children crave, right? And the impact on their social development, the impact on their emotional development, the impact on their ability to be able to work in teams, the ability to be able to how to interact with each other, all of that, communication skills, problem solving skills, being, that's the time when they're learning to be independent and creating a space away from the primary caregiver so that they can thrive in this environment which is away from the primary caregiver. All of these opportunities have been taken away from these children for the past almost 3 years here now. In May, it will be 3 years since we had the protests and the schools went online, right? So for a 10-year-old, 3 years is a long time. For a 5-year-old, oh my goodness, imagine that, So it is, and even 15, 18-year-olds, it's a long time. So it has had an impact on their various aspects of their development. Now, what can we do as parents to be able to support that? I think, as much as we would like to be able to have them socialize, talk to them, give them that time, not put them in front of the screens, because that's the only way they're learning. I think these kids are going to grow up thinking most people are like 2D on the screen rather than the 3D kind of image of people. It's a bit scary. They spend a lot of time just interacting like this. But it's important, I think, to be able to provide that sense of balance, and also knowing when is it enough for your family to be in this space, and how is it impacting your children's longer term development.
I guess every child is different, and because I look at my own children, and I've got a child that's more extroverted, and she really needs that interaction. It really brings her energy, and then I've got one child who is introverted and is absolutely loving all the home time and homeschooling and working with mom and dad, that kind of thing. Are you seeing different developmental for introverts versus extroverts? If you were to look at those two? One seems to be thriving and one seems to be, it's a little bit more difficult because they crave a bit more interaction.
Yeah, I think it is more their ability to be able to cope with and adjust, and they shouldn't have to. I don't think they should have to, right? But it is developing the coping mechanisms to be able to do that. Developmentally, I haven't got enough data points, but I hear exactly what you're saying. Some children are more comfortable in this environment, and my 15-year-old absolutely was thriving in the first 6 months. But even he's bored now, and when this one came along, he was like, I'm really lonely. They miss being in the classroom. So longer term, they are resilient. They've learned how to do it. They can get on the Zoom. They know exactly what to do. So, I'm so proud of them to be able to adjust to that. Parents have found it this harder this time, I think. But
Yes.
Again, that social interaction is what they crave. And even for an introvert, if that's a data point, he's told me it's day 2 of homeschooling or Zoom schooling that I miss going to school. I feel lonely. Yeah.
Turning it more to tools and tips that you share. How do we ensure our relationships continue to survive and flourish? I throw in survive because some people are there, right, looking at survival, but to really flourish in this environment that we can only control so much. What would be some of the tips or tools that you could maybe share with our readers?
I think the survival, it's sadly true. I have seen increased numbers of separations and difficulties within the relationships, definitely over the last 2 years, for sure. And it's not just the relationship, it is also the sense of isolation. You don't have your support network around you, and you can't go back home and visit the people that you feel supported by. So that's that part. The other part is to be able to support each other and be present for each other. I think it is very important that you have other outlets as well. So you're not relying on that one person for being everything. And because you're sharing the space, as I said, you're doing so, having your own time, creating your own space is very important, so that you're able to download, taking a breath, listen, and losing your cool sometimes. It's okay, it's all right, as long as you're able to then go back and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, but I am feeling XYZ. So having more of that communication, and sometimes maybe it's best not to do anything and just take a step back and wait for the EDB announcements.
Yeah, just kind of saying, yeah, I hear you. I think that's a great point to reiterate, is just to have a support network. So I think that is probably true in a lot of homes. They all just kind of jump on, it's all on top of each other, and the kids and the couples, putting everything on each other. So just having friends, outlets, family members that you can voice, vent, whatever you need, spread it out a little bit, and get different types of support, so that it isn't always with the one individual. Take the stress out a little bit. How about families that are missing? I mean, I haven't traveled back to see my family in 2.5 years, to Texas. How do you deal with families, a lot of expat families who haven't seen their families or haven't been home in years, just missing that family?
That's a really close to heart one. It's really, really tough because we can't eliminate the restrictions around us. That's been very, very difficult, and there are so many losses and griefs and missed family milestones and celebrations and funerals, and the unforeseen prolonged circumstances. It's just it's been draining, actually. It is. I can't find another word other than that, but it really is important to be able to, I think, stay in touch with them and make your choices. Actually, make your choices. I mean, I know many families who have all of this fear of, this, as I said, the threat away so that they can go and see their loved ones. I know it's difficult. 3 weeks in a hotel room with not being able to open the window. I mean, that's just, it's not okay. But I think maintaining relationships with them, making sure that you're on Zoom. But again, I say that, but over a period of 3 years, there is that cognitive dissonance that you feel like, yeah, there's something missing because you're not seeing that person in person, right? So it leaves you with a feeling of not enough. I would love to be able to go and touch my mum and hug her, but Zoom is not enough for that, or FaceTime is not enough. But we do have it, and I think it's about being. Right now, I feel it is about making your choices.
Right. Yeah. So that completes our second area that we wanted to talk about more about the restrictions on and around relationships, child development, and education. Are there any specific questions around that particular topic or any of the other ones that we've covered so far before we move to the third topic? I'm just going to check here. Not just yet. We do have quite a few readers on. And don't forget, if you see this video after it is live, you can always put your questions into the chat, and we will make sure that we get in touch with Dr. Zaidi to make sure you get the answers that you need. So we're going to move into our third topic area, and this one, well, I think it could be a little bit more uplifting because it's been a bit heavy with everything that's going on and the reality of the situation. I think it's great in terms of the tips and tools that we've got, but we only have what we have to work with here. So we're going to talk about self-care and just tips around that. So first, I just want to start off with how would you define self-care? Because I think a lot of people have different definitions of that.
Agreed. So self-care in 2017 was defined as multidimensional, multifaceted process of purposeful engagement in strategies that promote healthy functioning and enhance well-being. So it's not just one thing. For example, if you are just doing mindfulness and you're not able to sleep well, that doesn't work. You see, so it's multifaceted. So let me just go on with that, just to expand on that. There is physical self-care, which includes paying attention to and nourishing your body, resting your mind and body with good sleep, ensuring that there is some physical activity. And there are benefits, there are scientific benefits of doing physical exercise. It doesn't have to be rigorous, but it helps in reducing cortisol, stress hormones, your alert, I'm in danger hormones, which is what the threat response is. So that is important. So it's important to pay attention to your physical self-care, your psychological self-care. That's the other part. So, which is around your thinking patterns, information your mind holds, paying attention to, what we consume as information has an influence on our physical well-being. So you brought up a very good point of, if we're constantly talking about this, of course our children get impacted. So it is our choice as to what we consume and how much of it we consume. There is, being informed and being sucked into that vacuum of doom scrolling. We've got to be able to, again, make choices on that, right? So so that's the psychological self-care. Emotional self-care is about uncomfortable managing or learning to engage with. It's the uncomfortable emotions like anger, sadness, anxiety, stress. And there's a constant sense of threat that we've been feeling here as well. Lack of support and the loneliness. It's it is a world which is going through pandemic and we're constantly overwhelmed, lots of high emotions. So it is important to have healthy coping mechanisms to be able to manage the emotions, which are constantly changing. And the landscape of emotional distress is is constantly changing as we are going through the pandemic. And there is also what I feel is there is a general sense of collective grief that the world is going through, because the world that we knew before has now completely changed, and we don't know what that looks like. So there is a sense of loss and around that. But to be able to regulate and manage your emotions, so emotional self-care is also very important. And the question to ask is, do you have healthy ways to process your emotions, and what are the things that you can do to help yourself, where it's okay to feel the emotion? As I said, that's not the issue. The issue is how you deal with it. And it's okay. Yeah. And it's okay to take a step back and take a breath,
So when I look at some of the emotions that we see quite regularly, like anger, your child's not getting on Zoom at the right time, or not wanting to do things, in terms of typical, I guess, emotional regulation tips that you would have around something like that, what would you suggest?
What's really helpful, and looks, again, I have to caveat this with, usually it would work in normal circumstances, but again, it's about creating a space between your reaction and your response. So the reaction you feel is, hey, just get in front of the freaking screen. I mean, just get in front of it, right? Why can't you do it? Why do you have to make it so difficult? But it is about then the response, because that's the initial reaction, giving yourself time to create the response so that you get the best out of that situation and your child is able to listen to you. That's what helps in that kind of situation. Again, as I say, it's probably challenging, but that's something that you can learn to do. And all of our fuses are running short, so that's okay.
Yeah.
That's good too.
Do you have other good examples of self-care practices? I like how you broke it down, because I completely agree. I think probably 5 years ago, I thought self-care was only fitness and a bit of meditation, and now it really is this all-encompassing, covering the different areas. But do you have any examples of good self-care practices that you want to share?
Sorry, though, just to go back to that, there's also social self-care, which we've been speaking about, right? Because we spoke about relationships earlier as well. So being able to, I mean, it's important that you put in time in the relationship and friendships that are important to you. So again, going back to the boundaries as well, which is what we first spoke about. So, it's important to pay attention to what fulfills you, what is nourishing, rather than the energy vampires that you may have in your life, or energy, and part of that is the relationship with the phone and the technology and information consumption, right? So it's important. The key factors in creating and maintaining healthy relationships are accessibility, responsiveness, and emotional engagement. And all of these require your focused attention and investment of quality time. So that's where the focus has to be. So if we are able to be mindful and choose how we are making our day-to-day, minute-to-minute choices, do I really need to engage in this, Facebook group right now, or can I just go out for a walk? So that's the kind of thing, because every human being needs these four. I mean, there are many other parts as well relevant to today. All of that needs to be given attention to. So knowing, which relationships are important and how to be patient with them, with your children, with your spouse, with the friends who are also maybe going through difficult times. Emotional self-care, knowing how to regulate. Self-regulation is very important. With the other part, what we said was the psychological self-care. It is about the information you're consuming, how it impacts you, and what are the things that you can do about the situation, what are the things you can't do about it, and what is it that you will do about it, because that's a choice, and then what is that you won't do about it. So it's not just about what I can control and can't control. I think it has to get to the next step, what I will do about it and what I won't, because that creates a sense of choice. And again, physical self-care, I can't emphasize the importance of just even 5 minutes a day. Whatever it is, just do 5 to 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be an hour-long walk or an hour. It can just be, skincare. You're having a routine for skincare, getting up 5 minutes early so that you can have your cup of tea, whatever fulfills you. So small activities is what would be helpful daily.
I love the summary that you just took. If you look at the last 3 minutes, I feel like that will help a lot of people that need this information right now. So thank you for sharing it in such a nice, concise way in terms of what self-care looks like. One thing I was going to note on that is one thing that I've seen as well is the source of information. I think we need to be careful of as well. I have been engaged in a lot of conversations where it'll be, oh, my nail salon person has told me that schools will be shut until 2024, or and it's just sometimes I think we get wrapped up into the drama of the message and not always look at the source of the message, and is it true, and has it kind of gone through this telephone vibration as well. So just kind of keeping that in mind too, in terms of the information that we do consume.
I agree.
Another area in the topic of self-care, you mentioned 5 minutes a day for exercise, but practicing self-care every day when things are very busy. Those areas that you mentioned, was it 4 or 5 areas of self-care?
Four
key areas of self-care, doing that daily. How important is it to do it daily? And do you have any tips for people that are feeling quite overwhelmed? Like they maybe can just get a walk in and maybe they can't tend to the other 3, for example.
Yeah, no, you don't have to tend to all of them all at the same time, as long as because that becomes an overwhelming task, right?
Yes.
So anytime you're feeling overwhelmed, the most important part is that you're able to break it down into smaller things and what's achievable. It, again, not the hour walk for the 10,000 steps, but just being able to step outside. And if you only have 5 minutes, that's okay, as long as you're doing it consistently and you are doing that one thing at a time. Because we all want to we're wired that way, where we want to be the best athletes and the best at this. It's okay, because if you're doing a 5-minute walk today and you can do a 6-minute walk tomorrow and a 7-minute after that. So it's just building on small things rather than focusing on I need to go and run a marathon now. So it's just being aware of your own emotional responses and your own where you are emotionally, physically, and mentally. So you're able to look after that. And giving, the most important part in all of this is that women don't give themselves permission to self-care, because it's laden with guilt. If there's something wrong if I put in some of these measures. Well, and I'm guilty of that too, myself as a mother. But the most important part, what I've learned over the years, is that if you don't service your car and you don't regularly change the oil and put the air in the tires and don't get it regularly serviced, it will stop running at one point. And if you don't put in the petrol. So all of these things, even if it is 5 minutes or 4 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, it's okay to do. So first step is give yourself permission. Second step is just do as much as you can without beating yourself up about it, and do it consistently.
Excellent. No, there's you hear that, parents. We've definitely got to take advantage of doctor's advice here and make sure that we do the self-care. You do feel it, when you just take that moment or that walk or that hike when you're overwhelmed, you can feel the immediate benefits. So I think everybody can relate to that when they do take the time. Going to move into family self-care. We are spending a lot of time, I think, with the recent restrictions as well. We'll be spending even more time together as a family. Do you have any tips of self-care together as a family?
My experience has been, or my recommendations would be, again, very similar. What I've been talking about, that each person is responsible for taking care of their own emotions, their own physical well-being, and if they need, or their relational difficulties. And if they need any support, they absolutely should ask. There should be a space for that. But also giving other people the physical and emotional and physical support, and having that time to be able to create that within the family system is important. And I think it is actually very important that you have structure, routine around when it's my time, it's our time, it's work time, it's study time kind of thing, right? So you're not constantly being available to, and that was difficult first time around, actually, because just because you're at home doesn't mean you're constantly available for the mother role or the any other roles, because you're in the middle of your workday too. So I think that's probably important, and having compassion for yourself and for what your children are going through, and for your spouse is going through, or your partner is going through. I think having that sense of compassion and just simplifying our lives, I think, is also very important, not making it very complicated in getting involved in, everything that's going on. So just simple things, and doesn't need to be very complicated.
Right. Yeah. I think we could throw in gratitude in there as well, because it's tough sometimes to find those opportunities. But you do look at some of the news out there, especially with some of the news around the domestic helper situation in Hong Kong, and just being grateful that you have a house, or that your house or your apartment is got ventilation, and that you can, there's a lot of things I think that when you pin it down, that other people don't have that are in this situation. So that maybe can be helpful as well. It's hard. Are there any things that we can help our kids to push self-care for them? I know we talked about family, we talked about adults, but self-care for kids. Any tips or tools that you want to throw in there?
Children at the state, it depends what stage of child development they're at, but they are very self-caring when they're very young, right? They do have this tendency to create a space where they are looked after. But I think, having said that, it is important that it's the emotional regulation that, having the work that I'm doing, just thinking about that, it very much is about being able to help them manage and regulate these emotions and a sense of adversity, and creating a sense of, that we are able to get through this. I think that's the part, the resilience part, that we need to be helping them and being mindful of putting and making sure that gets spoken about.
So when you say just managing emotions, I know that that can take a lot of work for kids, but do you have any simple tips that maybe people can take away today in terms of dealing, either allowing kids to express their emotions, or tips on how to help them regulate their emotions?
Yeah, it is, the children are, when they're feeling frustrated, sometimes they don't have the words to express how they're feeling. So giving them the time and space to be able to understand what's going on for them, what's causing them this frustration. And then again, being able to work with them to be able to work through how that situation, just having a conversation about it, teaching them the recognition of anger as it's beginning to come up, and then being able to remind them that, you can take charge of it if you can recognize it coming up. You can absolutely do some deep breaths, for example. I teach when I work with children, or it is 4-6 breathings, or square breathing, that you breathe in like you're smelling the roses, and you hold for 1, and then you breathe out like you're blowing out the candles, and then you hold for a second. So it's like square breathing, and that's your body's response to, if you can learn it, It is your response to be able to say, hey, I'm safe. I'm not in danger, because all of these big emotions come up when the body is saying it's having a threat response.
So that actually concludes our section on self-care. I do see a couple of questions here. Just again, this topic is all around COVID fatigue, which again, everybody can relate to in some form or fashion right now. So we are at the end of our topics with Dr. Zaidi, and I'm just going to put out some questions. So if you do have any questions or comments you want me to share live, now is the time to pop those up. So one of the questions is, what can people do if they are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with their mental health right now? So maybe this is in not the mild cases. Maybe this is taking it up a level. What can they do if they're in that place?
It's important to reach out to the professionals, I would say. It is important to seek the right help and reach out for professional help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Here's another question. What are the warning signs to look out for to suggest a family member or friend who is struggling with their mental health? And what is the best way to help them? So I'm assuming this is a friend that you want to give a bit of encouragement, but without telling what to do, that they maybe need to seek a bit more help than friends and family.
Yeah, exactly that. The warning signs, I think, are, it depends what it is, but if there's something about them, that things that they used to enjoy doing, they're not doing, if they are not engaging in activities, if they have dropped off the radar kind of thing, and they're being isolated or isolating themselves, that's when you need to get help for them, because you might not be the right person to be able to give them. Of course, be present, make sure that they can reach out to you as much as you can offer that, but it would be and it's difficult to get people to see therapists, psychologists, if they don't see themselves that they need help. So that's a double-edged sword, right? That really, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a perfect area to wrap it up on. I want to thank you so much for your time and helping us understand how to survive these uncertain times and threats around the pandemic, the restrictions that are in place, all the news that's coming through. For those that are just tuning in now, definitely watch it from the start. There's so much good information here from Dr. Zaidi. I do want to just put a call to action here because I do know there's a lot of people out here that could benefit from this. We're going to put the link of MindnLife, which is Dr. Zaidi's clinical, basically where she is, and she's got you've got quite a team over there as well.
About 7 of us all together. Yeah,
seven altogether that specializes in everything related, and maybe you can reference some of those areas as we put this information. So if you do want to book a counseling session, we're going to include the information of MindnLife in the comments there. Also, if you are watching this after this goes live, you can always ask your questions. So maybe you've seen something, you want to know a little bit more, you want to ask Dr. Zaidi a specific question, just put it in the comments and we will make sure that we get in touch and get those questions answered. You'll find this on YouTube and LinkedIn after the live session as well. So there'll be more opportunities to watch this outside of Facebook. So yes, thank you so much, Dr. Zaidi. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I think just, a day at a time is what we can do right now. So just please look after yourselves and your families. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I hope some of it was helpful.
It was helpful. Thank you so much for your time. And to all of our listeners out there, we will see you next time. Stay tuned and may the force be with you.